Seth Stern, co-author of Justice Brennan, Liberal Champion.
And Steve Wermiel, the other co-author of Justice Brennan, Liberal Champion.
Well, he joined the Supreme Court at an era of intellectual giants. You had Felix Frankfurter, his former law professor at Harvard, Hugo Black, the former senator from Alabama, William Douglas, who is sort of the wonder kid, head of the SEC and professor, Earl Warren, the former governor of California. And so in their midst, Brennan really looked minor in comparison, and that was sort of why everyone perhaps underestimated him, because by comparison he really seemed to be a small figure among intellectual giants. As far as the issues, you had Brown versus Board of Education had just been decided a couple years earlier, and so the issue of civil rights and school desegregation would be important early in his tenure. The issue of communist subversives and the era of McCarthyism had only recently begun to fade a bit. And certainly an issue that he faced his first term and would continue to face for much of his tenure was obscenity and what to do with material that was obscene and potentially objectionable, and whether it deserved protection under the First Amendment.
He said before he came to the court the person he was most in awe of, and I think this actually continued, was Hugo Black. Black was really this legendary constitutional figure, had a great intellect, master of the Constitution, and so I think Brennan was most, not scared of, but really awestruck by Black. His most difficult relationship almost immediately was with Felix Frankfurter. Frankfurter tended to be a somewhat overbearing individual. He thought that he was trying to woo newcomers to the court in the same sense that Brennan began to do that himself. But Frankfurter really tolerated no kind of variance. If you're one of my boys, you do it my way, and if you don't do it my way, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And so Brennan really was offended early on that Frankfurter kind of expecting to be able to tell Brennan how things were done and even how to vote and how certain cases should come out. And Frankfurter would come in and try to woo Brennan's law clerks as well, because they were all Harvard students in his first 10 years. And so they were supposed to be in awe as well of the legendary Felix Frankfurter, the great Harvard Law School professor. And so it just didn't go well. They remained friendly and very cordial. They lived right across the street from one another in Georgetown. They socialized somewhat. But I think Brennan was very put off by Frankfurter's attempts to influence him.
It was something that developed almost immediately. It's almost amazing the number of big opinions that Warren assigned him that first term. And Steve would ask him about that, ask Justice Brennan, how did you come to be so close to Warren so quickly? And Brennan, who wasn't necessarily the most self-reflective person, would just say it just sort of happened. And in some ways they had similar personalities, and also they had a history of sort of this relationship, Warren, the senior, and Brennan playing the junior, where he had done this in New Jersey and during his tenure in the Army, helping implement the vision of a more senior sort of partner. And he did that very effectively for Warren, and I think Warren saw that Brennan could play the role of quarterback, marshaling majorities for his vision of the Constitution.
I think that's a fair description. It's not to say that Brennan didn't have an intellect and didn't have ideas. But Brennan was a very good lawyer, a very good craftsman, a skilled tactician in ways that I don't think Warren really was. I think Warren had a vision, sort of egalitarian vision of the Constitution and of the role of the court. I think he and Brennan shared that vision, but I think Brennan did a lot of the nuts and bolts of figuring out how to get from point A to point B. If you want to bring a particular right under the Constitution or make a particular right apply as a limit to the states, not just to the national government, it seems that Brennan was the one picking the cases that would be good vehicles for doing that. And that's a comment, I think, not just about Warren, but also about the relationship with Black and Douglas. I mean, this is sort of an exaggerated way of thinking about it, but it's almost as if Black and Douglas were there thinking great thoughts, and meanwhile Brennan was getting it done.
Certainly by 1960 you did see this private circulation among Warren and Brennan, Douglas and Black. They were beginning to vote as a cohesive bloc frequently, sharing opinions, and Brennan, you see, playing that role of sort of strategist. I think they had come to respect him very quickly for his ability, and it was a couple more years, though, until they had that fifth vote when Arthur Goldberg joined them, that they had that solid block of 5. But you see them operating in that cohesive way a little earlier.
Humble about, but aware of. Yes, I think that he understood that he was playing a significant tactical and pragmatic role. But in his own way, he always wanted it to be about Earl Warren. He always would say, it was the chief's vision, or I mean, he had this great respect for Warren and for what the Warren court did, and so he was reluctant to have the conversation be about Brennan rather than a recognition of Warren's accomplishments.
Well, if anything, during the Warren years, I think his role trying to build majorities actually tempered him. He was the one trying to find a way to accommodate everyone. And it was only in the 1970s, when Warren had left, that he came to take more absolutist positions on issues like the death penalty or obscenity. So I think the way to think of it is he was sort of tempered. I think it was there. I think he changed perspectives from that of a state judge to a judge on the U.S. Supreme Court, and started seeing things differently on issues like the rights of criminal defendants or civil rights, and came to believe that there was a role for a more assertive judiciary to protect individual rights. But the sort of full-throttle liberal great voice, I think you saw more of that in the 70s when he was in the role of dissenter.